Hi guys, welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
So we were randomly just talking about different topics, and then the idea of comparison just started flowing out of us. And I feel like everybody has that sense of comparison. Everybody has a situation where it's like you look at your own situation and you can't help but compare to everybody else. And I feel like even though it's necessary and it's just a part of life, comparison could be sometimes really dangerous for mental health and just well-being in general. And so we thought maybe we would just talk a little bit about that this week.
People on social media always see the people they're following and they're watching the videos from. And sometimes, usually they're better than you in some type of way. Usually social media is only showing their good side. So you never get to see the other sides of them. So you can't really compare.
There was a time in my life where I was really struggling with that. I had a really hard time being on social media because things weren't, I guess you could say, working out in my life as I expected them to, especially in my late 20s. And I made the conscious decision to get off of social media for a while because I was seeing everybody, especially women my age, they were getting married and they were having babies and, they looked like they had the perfect life. And I didn't feel like my life was perfect at all. I was really struggling with some of the things that were happening in my life, just because they were hard. And when you're on social media and you're looking at those pictures and you're looking at those special moments, you do so much comparing. Why isn't my life like theirs? And yeah, it just really started to affect me in my mental health. And I got off of Instagram and I got off of Facebook for a while. And I remember there was a time where I tried it out. I downloaded it back on my phone and I was just like, I'm right back here. I don't like it. It helped me. And now that I'm back on because of the podcast, I can really experience that growth. And there are still moments where I am comparing because it's so hard not to. But it's amazing how you grow in your faith and you grow in your true identity. That comparing isn't as harsh. It's still there for sure, but it's just not as harsh.
I think a lot of times too, people compare even a faith journey. I know for my own self, when I first started having a relationship with Jesus or, just going to church, it was like, you go to church? People were so shocked by that. I remember sometimes people just being like, well, I guess you're just like your dad, you're just like your father. I would never be offended by a comment like that because, I think my dad's a really great man and his faith is really beautiful. But I think everybody kind of wants to be themselves. I don't think anybody really wants to be in a position where your whole identity is wrapped up in what somebody else is. Because I feel like we do that to ourselves enough. And then when we start doing it to ourselves, I think the only road that you go down at that point is a road to nowhere because at the end of the day, I'm never actually going to be my dad because he is him and I am me. And there are things about him that I love and that I feel like I definitely would love to aspire to be like. But I'm myself. And I think that's something that is really important for everybody to understand that, you're you. And the things that you bring, nobody else really can.
I feel like also we all have different perceptions of people in our minds, and other people have different perceptions of us. They all have parts of who we are. They only see certain sides and angles of what we actually are. And I feel like sometimes they judge off of that. For example, you could see someone for the first time and have a horrible impression of them and think of them instantly as like evil, angry, mean, upset. But really, they could just be having a bad day and maybe that's all that's happening to them. And they're just angry. I guess you're kind of in the way of that. And I know that's not a way to treat someone, but sometimes that's what happens. You just get angry and you don't really know what to do. And you accidentally give it to other people.
Yeah, it's so funny because when you were just talking about that, the first impression or the false impression that we get of people, sometimes the false impression is because the other people are giving off something that maybe we don't like, we don't know, we don't understand. And then other times, I think there's just something that maybe somebody else said or somebody else thought, and then we take what they believe and make it ours. And then you have a whole situation that is just wrong. It's weird because the story that actually came to my mind, which is so strange because I'm not young anymore, but the story that came to my mind when you were talking was when I was 17. And I remember I worked at King Cullen, and there was a bunch of us young people that were working there. And I remember there was this one girl that worked at the place, and we did not like each other. I didn't like her because somebody said something about her, and she didn't like me. And we were both like, I mean, if you knew me when I was 17, I wasn't a very nice person. And she was kind of maybe a little bit like me. And I remember for a long time, like we would both be working and we would just be like nasty and talking trash about each other. One night, for some reason, we got stuck next to each other on the cash register. And we were just there and we were just like, I guess giving each other like the evil eye. It was like, you. And she was like, you. And then I just remember her being like, so what is your problem with me anyway? And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, well, so many things. And I remember like going off, like just saying like, you know, this is what I heard, blah, 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 whatever. And she's like, oh, she's like, that's funny because I kind of heard the same thing about you. And I don't know how it ended up because it was so long ago, but I do remember like her and I ended up becoming really good friends. And there was not a big God thing going on in my life at the time, but I remember her and I were both like, well, isn't that really interesting how we kind of really get along and we like really hit it off, but something was making it so that we just wanted to stay away from each other and we were hating on each other. And it was for no good reason at all. And we did end up being like good friends. As I got older and I was finishing college and got a different type of a job, we ended up not talking anymore. But the whole entire rest of the time that we worked there together, we actually became really good friends. Her name was Jen. I will probably never forget her, but I just remember thinking like, wow, yeah, I totally prejudged her. And she prejudged me, and both of us were wrong. It was interesting.
I'm reminded when James was talking about in one of our previous episodes about letting your guard down and allowing people to see who you really are and not being afraid to show them who you are and then like accept who they are and with their differences, because I'm definitely thinking about work and comparing, because you go into work and, you know, it's people from all different walks of life and they're different ages. And, you know, when you get into the adult world and you don't know everybody right away and it takes a really long time. I mean, we're teachers, you know, we don't really need many people to do our job unless we have a co-teacher. But even other than that, it's kind of just us running the show. And what I've noticed, I mean, I've been teaching at our school for 13 years. And what I've noticed is people that I maybe compared myself to and thought I was lesser or better. I don't know. I don't have a specific person or situation in mind, but you definitely look at people and think there's some way and then think that they look at you some way too. And then all of a sudden 1 year you share a classroom together and they become one of your best friends, whether it be a God relationship or I remember this one particular teacher, it was planning our wedding party. My favorite part of my day was sitting with her for 40 minutes and getting to share with her about what I was planning for my wedding party. And, you know, if we welcome that and we're not afraid to step into a connection with somebody with our truest self and with honesty and trust, it creates a beautiful connection with other people.
I could tell you going into high school and seeing all the other kids, I guess you would say, like the newer kids. It's like I kind of ruled some of them off as, oh, I'm definitely not going to become friends with them. They seem angry and annoying. So, of course, I rule that out. And then like a couple of days later, I end up talking to them and I become friends with them. It's interesting because when you first go into a new environment, you're going to have your guard up. You're going to try to protect yourself at all costs. You're going to try to make sure you don't get hurt. And I feel like that makes you more closed off. But once you start to open up, you don't just get to see the other person, but the other person gets to see you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's connected again to fear. In this circumstance, it's like the fear of being known and the fear of maybe being judged and the fear of being not accepted.
Or even not being good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe even being rejected for not being good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's something that everybody experiences that. And it's an interesting thing because I think it's something that we have inside of us, like and those old rejections go back so far. The old rejections could go back to being in elementary school and not getting chosen for like the team or something. And then as you get older, you have this, we don't even realize we have it, but we have this like identity or this thought of like, well, I'm not good enough and I'm not going to get chosen. I remember I was listening to an episode from the Friars of the Renewal. One of them was talking about like the team, like not getting chosen for the team. He was saying in it like how there was such a like a wound of like rejection. And as an adult, you look at that and it's like, come on, like get over it. And believe me, I am like the first one to say to myself, to anybody, you know, like just get over it. But the reality is for some people, not being chosen thing that happened when you were 8 or when you were 10 sticks with you. And then as you get older and you're like looking at the possibilities, maybe the possibilities get ruled out and you just like don't feel like you're chosen and you feel like you're not going to be enough. And that is a lie because you are enough. You're always enough. Just as your identity as a child of God, you are enough. You were enough. You'll always be enough. But we get stuck in that lie of, well, they didn't choose you then. Why are they going to choose you now? It's really insidious.
No. And I think when we compare, and I'm completely guilty of it in junior high and high school, just really wanting to be in that popular crowd. I was one of those girls that I wanted to be in the popular crowd. And I compared myself a lot to who was considered the popular girls. But I could never be like them fully. It never felt comfortable. Like it's like I wasn't being myself. So when you start to compare to other people, whether it be in high school or as an adult, you then almost change who you really are and you try to be somebody different, but it never feels right because it's really not who you are. And whether it's them or not being who they are, that's like on them. It's not really on you. But James, you shared a really cool story about your gym class like a couple weeks ago in prayer group. And I remember I saw one of the older men who is in our prayer group and he came up to me after and he was saying that, you know, I'm not exactly sure, but I will say 60s, maybe 70s. And he said, I remember I could actually feel the feeling of being in gym class again and not being chosen. And that is something it just sticks with us. But when you share like your bravery and your courage to not conform to that in comparison because you feel like you should or shouldn't, like it really gives people, it transforms their own heart. I have a story. I feel like you're about to say something, but I have a story. I have a story that when I heard that podcast from the Friars, I played basketball when I was I think I started in 4th grade. And I played basketball in 4th grade on the intramural team. And then I made the basketball team in 7th grade. And the coach was my social studies teacher. And I remember how proud I was because I didn't feel like I knew I wasn't the best on the team. And I never really was sure where I fit in past not being the best. And then I made the team and there was like this, I was just so proud. And then I went out for the team in 8th grade. Same coach, I'm a year older, and I didn't make the team. I couldn't believe like the little wound that it created in me because it was like, okay, so he chose me because he thought I was good enough. But then it was like, oh, and then he got to know me and then he didn't choose me. And and still to this day, if anybody asks me if I play sports in school, I'm like, oh, I play basketball, but like, oh, yeah, I wasn't even good. I say it all the time. And my dad, I could see the look on my dad's face. My dad would be like, you were good. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. I'm tired. I was terrible.
Wow.
It reminds me a lot of boxing with comparing. When you watch other boxers, you're supposed to like pick up the stuff that you see in the professionals. And you do that and you change your style, but you don't go fully using their style because then it's not your style. It's theirs. Like, I'm always telling my dad, I'm like, I kind of have a style like blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you know who you have a style like? James.
Wow. I love that.
The word chosen is really coming in my mind. Just listening to the stories. I already know your story, and now listening to your story. I really never even tried out for teams, so I can't even talk about this because, like, I think I played on like a team when I was really little, but I never cared, and I never even like tried. And in school, that sports was not my thing. I did other things, but I know what that still feels like. I know what that feels like to want to be chosen, to want to be picked, to want to be seen. Like you said, it was like this small little wound, and it wasn't something that was really that big, and you didn't think it was that big a deal, but it stayed with you. And even if you did have talent, even if you played the sport well, it's as though because you weren't chosen, you were like telling yourself, well, no, actually, I was never good. And your dad, I love that your dad's like, no, actually, you were pretty good, because that's probably true. Mm-hmm. That's just fascinating to me, because I think that is such a, like, it's such a way of the world. Like, it's just so much the way that we are. And really think about it, like what's the most popular Jesus show right now? It's The Chosen. And what I love so much about The Chosen, I feel like James is probably thinking of The Chosen too right now, but when you're thinking of The Chosen, what I love so much about it, and I know we already said this and we say it all the time, but like, they would have never been chosen. Mm-hmm. They would have never been chosen. They would have never been seen. They would have never been the ones. And I feel like Jesus always found them. And I'm thinking specifically of Matthew in The Chosen. Because Matthew in the Bible, he's the tax collector, and they're hated by everybody. Like, everybody hates the tax collectors. And in the show, I felt like they did such a great job, because you do watch Matthew watching the group of chosen, like the apostles that were already called. But what I love so much about the way that they do it, first of all, the chosen were like all the misfits anyway. So all the misfits are like already chosen, and Matthew was hated by them. They hated Matthew so much. And they did a really good job of showing how much they hated them. But you watch Matthew's eyes and you see him like looking and like wanting to be picked, which is what we all want. And you see Jesus is with everybody, and then he just turns around, and when he locks eyes with Matthew in that, it's like he's locking eyes with everybody. It's like he's locking eyes with the whole world, because we're all Matthew. We're all the one that isn't chosen at some point. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 5 or 50 or 70. We all want to be chosen. And when Jesus does choose you, there's something about it, people. When you meet him, the real thing, the real encounter with Jesus, and you know that he's choosing you, there's something so special about it that touches you so deeply that all of those times when you weren't chosen, you're like, oh no, I am chosen. It's like you turn from like black and white, and all of a sudden you're like in color, and you're like, I am alive.
Oh yeah.
It's like you become alive. I don't know how to explain it, but you have to experience it. But if you have never had an encounter, ask for one, because he's never going to say no to that.
With boxing, you're gonna have your ups and downs. Well, as my dad would say, it's like a wave. You're either at the peak when you're the best and you're doing great and you're doing the best you've ever been. Sometimes you're at the middle where it's neutral and you're just kind of cruising by and doing what you do. And then there's gonna be times when you're at the bottom and you get beat. And I find sometimes, me included, when I get touched up in sparring, I find myself being like, oh my gosh, I suck. You gotta figure out that when you're at the bottom, it's usually you're comparing yourself with someone who's at the top.
Mm-hmm. Or even yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, like something that you may have been able to do better a day before, or wish you could do better, or working to do better. The Chosen, that Matthew is incredible. Mm-hmm. My favorite part is when in his eyes, it's almost like you can hear him saying, who, me? Yeah. And I heard a reflection. I listened to 1,000 of them, so I forgive me. I can't even tell you which one it was or where it was, but it said that Jesus chooses you before your conception. Oh, yeah. Like no one and nothing is a mistake in his eyes. And so the beauty in listening to what you were saying about being chosen is he chooses every single one of us. Mm-hmm. The seed of faith is in every single one of us. And it's so easy to compare. I mean, circling right back to the story. Oh, it makes sense because you're like your dad. Or James, it makes sense because you're the descendant. and then for me, what people say is, oh, you had that really big hardship in your life. That's the reason why. It's not at all. I mean, luckily, I encountered Jesus 6 years prior to Brian passing away. So people get that misconception and then they start to compare their own faith journey. And that's not for me, or I'm not religious, or, but it's in every single one of us, and when it happens, I'm able to like witness that encounter, it's so beautiful. And I know that I was there once before too. I had no idea, but thank God for my parents for getting me baptized and making me go for my communion and my confirmation. But even if they didn't do that, I still always have an opportunity to do that. And I think that's just the most beautiful thing about faith, is just there is always an opportunity for an encounter with him.
I know I didn't really become religious from like hardship or anything like that. I kind of became religious because I kind of grew up with it. And watching The Chosen for the first time, you could ask Marissa or my mom, I lit up. And I could tell you early on when I was like a baby, like more of a baby Christian, I'd kind of get offended when someone would say I'm like a Jesus freak or something. But as I grew up and started to listen to the faith more, I'm like, why wouldn't I want to be called a Jesus freak? I mean, I love the dude.
Yeah, so proud of it, right?
Yeah.
I think it just comes down to like being like, I just can't stop thinking of like just being chosen. And like what you said before, he did choose us first. That's from the letter to St. John. You didn't choose him, he chose you. And he chose you before the foundation of the world. He chose you before you even knew anything even existed. You were chosen. You were chosen because you're here. And the beauty of that is so like, it's like this everlasting, it's like we do have to choose back. We have to choose back. There's our yes that has to go alongside it. And The Chosen, what it really just did was help open up your mind and your heart to the possibilities. And it just does this really good job of portraying how Jesus sees us. And we all want to be seen. But the reality of it is like, yeah, I was always chosen. And when you know it, it just changes things. The comparison becomes less because, I mean, we're not perfect. Perfection doesn't perfectly imperfect. We know that that's not going to happen. But there really is this sense of security that you get from knowing, like, wait a second, before anything, before anyone, before you call me this, before I was called this, before I got that fake name of being, not enough, I was already chosen. And the freedom that comes with that is just beautiful. And I think we are kind of like wrapping it up, if you guys want to have anything else to add to end it here, but I think we're coming close.
I think one more thing I just want to add is that everyone is also chosen for a different mission. And I think we can compare people in our same walks with each other and, oh, she's doing this and I'm not. But everyone is chosen for another specific mission. And just find your mission and let it shine to the whole world.
Absolutely.
Illuminate.
Yep. Let that light shine.
Amen.
Yeah, because everyone shines. Tiny miracles. My tiny miracle is that I've been sick for a couple of weeks and I haven't been able to really walk outside. And I got to walk outside. I went with Mike and Daisy and we went for a walk. I felt so good. I woke up. I was like, I could go for a walk. I'm going to go outside for a walk. And I was like, I don't know about this. I was getting like out of breath and Mike was like, we'll just go slow. And it ended up being good. And today I got to go for a walk again. And I feel like I'm like back to normal almost. So that my tiny miracle is just being able to go outside and walk again.
I guess my tiny miracle, well, this is from when I was really young. But I guess since you were talking about a pool and reminded me of it. But and diving into pools. I dove into a pool with a giant, it wasn't even goggles. It was like a giant mask.
It was the mask.
I jumped in with it and like glass or plastic,
Shattered.
whatever it was. It shattered. And instead of going into my eyes, I don't even know where it went. It didn't go near my eyes at all. It didn't scratch me at all. I just got out and I was like, oh, my mask broke. That's not good.
It was so scary.
Yeah.
Tiny miracle.
That's crazy. My tiny miracle is yesterday I had a catering job with my friend Maxine, and we went to a winery that I had never worked an event at before. And, you know, it's winter, so it's a slower season. And it was just so nice to be working with her and working in that environment. It's very different than teaching, and you get to meet people. And it's just such a different thing to do outside of my regular job, and to do it with her and like to meet the people. It was like a very smooth job. And yeah, it was just a great way to start the Sunday and then have this day off to recover too. So.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
I'm coming up with this one on the spot, so it might not fit, but see you in the cool pool, little tool.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.